So the 3.17 Balance Manifesto is out and folks have had time to rest and digest, and I wanted to gather up my thoughts for those who were wanting to hear them ahead of the full announcement. We'll go over what I'm concerned about, what I'm sad to see go, and what I think is headed in an overall good direction. I'm Brittleknee, and these are my thoughts on the most recent manifesto. We'll go ahead and address the elephant in the room, which is bows. After being essentially shut out of my favorite archetype since 3.9 during the last Bow League, I was cautiously optimistic reading that there were upcoming bow changes. I really hoped that the manifesto would address and reconcile the myriad of problems this archetype faces at the moment. The current landscape of bows falls basically into two categories: damage over time and headhunter delivery service. A majority of bow skills are aimed at clear optimization, and generally you could say that about most skills in the game. However, with more and more in-game focus on bossing and with the recent addition of aspirational content, there's a huge divide between what bow skills can handle what content, unless you have the currency to strong-arm the solution. The manifesto correctly identified that this was indeed a problem, and to their credit, they did offer a myriad of buffs. From improving the base and flat damage available on bows, to increasing access to certain mod availability, such as making the +1 arrow more generic. Overall, the homogenization of type-specific modifiers into increased damage with bow skills is also a good change. The new quiver types offer a bit of spice as well, some being quite powerful when combined with certain bow skills. So why am I unhappy? These changes mostly solve the entry-level problems into bows and not the in-game specific ones. Easier access to base and added damage, as well as the now relative ease of rolling a somewhat decent quiver, in addition to new masteries, lessens a lot of the pain in starting a hit-based elemental bow attack. These changes have been made in mind with the idea that starting with a bigger number and washing it through all the various progression steps we take anyways means that players can reach certain damage thresholds for less investment. However, it does nothing to address that there are still significant challenges to bossing on this archetype. Outside of a few select skills which are all-rounders, most bow skills rely on gem swaps, bow swaps, 2/6 links, or diverting your damage through vectors such as totems and mines. Furthermore, with some skills you need to rely on other sources of damage to round out your numbers, such as Hydra Sphere and Void Fletch, and those are both on the chopping block. The most fun I ever had in this archetype was pre-nerf Scourge Arrow in 3.8 and earlier. I didn't play the Hail Negator meta, but I had a humble little trickster that could progress to killing bosses on a timeline and investment level that didn't make me, a more casual player, feel like I was making a mistake for choosing a bow skill over a spell skill at league start. Old Scourge Arrow allowed me to have access to what makes a bow archetype fun, which is zoom zoom, shatter shatter boom. And then, when needed, I could boss. No gem swaps, no second 6-link, no convoluted array of conditionals to squeeze out damage, but I could use that same skill because of the inherent scaling provided by its stage system, and cross that threshold into reliable boss damage. If we take the most pessimistic approach and remove Hydra Sphere and Void Fletcher from the consideration, in-game bossing on bows just became less diverse, not more. I fundamentally understand that there's an inherent challenge to balance here, because you can't just give something like Eyeshot the base damage boost necessary to kill bosses without introducing a meta washout and subsequent nerf, because it's clear would be insane. I would have rather seen a promise or tease of bow skill supports which try to tackle this problem inherently rather than just pumping generic damage. I don't like to criticize without offering a possible solution, because I want to have a dialogue about this. I don't want to simply complain and be another source of negativity. I love both, and I want them to be accessible to a wider player base for all content. I propose that offering 2 single-target focus supports alongside the existing options of things like barrage support and washing damage through totems and mines could really diversify bows in the endgame. The first one already exists in the game, and that's snipe support. Snipe support turns any bow skill into a type of Scourge Arrow by allowing you to channel it, gain stages, and access multiplicative damage scaling needed to fire off powerful single-target shots. This would be in contrast to the existing barrage support, as you can choose between successive smaller hits or one really big one, depending on your preferences or how your bow skill of choice scales. Snipe support is currently found on the Asylum helmet, which is limited to 4 links only, so its in-game equivalent would have to have its damage output scaled accordingly. A second idea would be a support which would bring a sort of multi-strike / unleash idea to the archetype to fill in what was lost from Hydrosphere, Void Fletcher, and other sources of additive / repeated damage. I'd call it bombardment support, which would, if attacking a unique or rare enemy, grant a chance for a bow skill to repeat in a swift assembly sort of way with tiered percentage outcomes. This allows a satisfying boost in single target without locking yourself into an animation like Barrage or a channel like Snipe. It would be competitive with Mirage Archer. While these are just ideas, and I'm certainly not a game designer, nor am I burdened with the need to balance game mechanics, but I think that opening a dialogue about possible single-target solutions is important to the futures and overall feel of the Bow archetype, and I sincerely hope that we'll see some of these in the 3.17 announcement or subsequent leagues. What's been done to bows thus far is a good first step, and I sincerely hope to see that continue. Now that that very long rant about bows is out of the way, let's briefly go over the rest of the manifesto. As far as the spell skill changes are concerned, I feel similarly to a lot of folks where I feel like it missed the mark. Hand casting definitely needed incentives to play it over its bi-proxy and triggered equivalents, but make number big is not enough alone, nor is increasing access to cast speed. There's this unfortunate mentality in some of the skill design in PoE where things are allowed to inherently be bad so that they can feel good later, and to this I don't agree. The kinetic, visceral feel of an ability is a primary reason to play a skill or an action in RPG in general, if we're being honest. The baseline desire is to obliterate monsters. I don't agree that something has to be bad first in order to feel good later. And so while I appreciate options that they've tried to give us to declutter the clunk of hand casting, I'd have rather seen a baseline cast speed reduction across the board. Let investments into cast speed, AoE, crit, and fine-tuning with clusters and masteries carry builds from good to great, but let hand casting feel good at a baseline. I'm not sure if stacking this much damage onto the skill gem itself is perhaps a preparation for a transition into PoE 2's upcoming gem system, where we can likely expect the relative power of support gems to fall away in lieu of power granted more generically from sources such as gear and passives. I look at the last patch and certainly future patches as a progression of supports into being de facto thresholds, where utility and customization is the main reason for extra links versus raw damage output. Moving on, the loss of threshold jewels for some skills will cast them back into the pool of unusability and obscurity. So hopefully with player outcry, the missing threshold effects from things like freezing pulse will show up on the gem, or at least alt quality by the time patch notes roll around. The alt quality system is a perfect way to retire certain types of threshold gems, so I hope they consider doing that. We've also talked a bit about Hydrosphere already. There were skills similar to those relying on certain threshold jewels to be playable that were reliant on Hydrosphere for their damage output to be acceptable, and hopefully the announcement will explain how they hope to elevate these skills to be in balance with the others now that Hydrosphere has been changed. The Mark changes are wonderful in my opinion. Everyone being able to automate one for the cost of a gem socket is a fair and easy trade for just about everyone but summoners. I'm really glad this didn't go the Hex Touch support route requiring a linked skill. Fortify is having some of its inconsistency removed, allowing for fortification to be granted independent of any damage reduction scaling the boss or monsters you're fighting might have. While this is a good first step, Fortify is still in an odd spot, and hopefully further revisions will be done. I still expect to see a fair amount of champions. Hit-based Detonate Dead is taking a smack, as it benefited more from the Spectre shenanigans over its Ignite variant. Ignite will still be strong, as it was mostly just corpse fishing anyways. What the Desecrate changes mean for hit-based Detonate Dead is a more uniform damage experience, where things like the Shaper encounter, which had an extremely diverse corpse pool, will feel generally better, and things with a less diverse corpse pool, such as synthesis maps, will feel worse. Overall, the damage will be more consistent, and that's not the worst thing in the world, but it was really fun to watch synthesis bosses go squish. But if you're planning on starting Detonate Dead, I would definitely still recommend the Ignite variety. Similar to Detonate Dead, Fizz Traps and Toxic Range should generally be fine. Seismic didn't need the overlaps to be bonkers, as its strength was its strong base damage combined with trap CDR. A lot of folks cleared content even without investing into AoE, so it's fine. Toxic Rain is losing about 20% of its base dot damage, but there's new tools and new mods available in the bow toolbox that this damage reduction was made alongside or in accountants for. The rest of the manifesto breaks down into some upcoming aura changes, including new aura supports that look interesting, as well as fixing a whole bunch of shenanigans people got up into last league. Hopefully this wasn't too ranty, and I hope you enjoy the breakdown if you made it this far. This is my first video of this type, so I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please let me know in the comments or with a thumbs up or maybe a subscribe. That'd be awesome. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow with the announcement, and I'm looking forward to it.